it really helps as you're trying to do any local policy change to really have some real life examples of the alternative going at the same time.
Grassroots champions in these cities where they don't have any policy at all. And there are people that are working on reusable trays in schools, and we're working on refilling stations. So even if it's just starting with reusable trays in schools with an education piece and those refill stations with an education piece, then it, just gets that little bit moving, that then it can move to the next step.
Sometimes it was helpful to us, conservative environment, to have actual real life examples of materials and resources from a city that we could then replicate. So one, for example, is the true cost of single-use bags. So not just the environmental impacts, but also the economic impacts in terms of waste management, stream cleanup, the bags getting clogged in the recycling machinery, every single externality that really encompasses the full cost. Don't Waste Durham was waiting and waiting and waiting for elected leaders to do the right thing. And we all know how long that can take and how frustrating it can be. So that did not deter us from taking action, direct action, to offset single-use bags. So we created Bowl City Boomerang Bag, which was powered by hundreds and hundreds of committed, an army of volunteer sewers who would come together 4 times per month and crank out bags by the thousands of all different materials. These were rescued materials, so it got bags into the hands of people who might not otherwise own them or be able to buy them, so it helped normalize this concept.
Coming in with a whole reuse program isn't easy, but we can start small. And starting small is focusing on refilling. Get rid of the plastic beverage bottle, let's refill, and really pushing that information on why it's so important.
And this is a sort of a strategy for conservative states as well, because no one dislikes the idea of helping school children. I think it's an awesome entry point for reuse in a community. Large volume closed loop venues are the way to start. And yes, you will eventually get restaurants and grocery stores and everybody else on board, but to grow the infrastructure and make the numbers work and reach the tipping point in our society, and especially in a conservative environment, I strongly know from experience and evidence that schools are a great entry point.
DEQ has what's called the Recycling Grant Fund. All of the taxes collected across landfill tipping fees go into a fund for DEQ, which is then supposed to be allocated toward a grant program focused on R&D, waste reduction assistance, equipment, technology, and then education.
Early on, we did the best thing ever by accident. We involved the health department in our conversations years before we started the reuse. Co-design the wash facility, co-design the wash protocols, and they even went to bat for us at the state level. And so now the NC Health Code for the state is now changed because of Don't Waste Durham and the health department's partnership to allow for reusables.
I really believe that with the conservative states, especially, tapping into those grassroots champions who are already doing work and really trying to collaborate that, pairing it up with that local government that can have a bigger voice. Now, granted, the local government may be 20,000 people, maybe 10, maybe 5,000, maybe 500, I don't know, but being able to tie that in and then tie that in with the full MRCTI Association of Mayors, I think has the ability to also move the needle.
As the city, who do we oversee in terms of waste management? And so we support Sky Harbor International Airport. We support Phoenix Convention Center. We also support a lot of our public schools. And so, we have these tie-ins already, which we can't require them to do this, but we can nudge them and encourage them. We do have a sustainable purchasing policy here at the city that was adopted in 2007. Within this policy, it does encourage procurement officers and those procuring products in general for the city or for their department to look for covered, recycled, or reusable materials. And then, of course, looking at what are the vendors and services that have reuse business models that we can encourage utilization for. When we're in a situation of we cannot incentivize or disincentivize, how can we take back a little more control? And that typically is through procurement language. That is something actively being explored. Another way that we really lean into cultivating reuse models here is through economic development collaborations. In the state of Arizona, policy is not always a key driver, which I'm sure many in this group can relate to. We have things like preemption laws, so ban on bans, barriers or challenges that we as city level drivers often come up against. And so for us in our circular economy journey as the city, as the state of Arizona, has really been looking at the economy side of it. How do we highlight the economic development benefits of leaning into circular economy versus the status quo? We work really closely with entities like Greater Phoenix Economic Council that has a dedicated business attraction and development team focused on circular economy, clean tech solutions, and attracting them into the Phoenix metro region.
So when we started the Mississippi River Plastic Pollution Initiative with United Nations and University of Georgia, we really were trying to figure out where do we start, right? And so we started by collecting data. And so we collected data, litter data, using the Marine Debris Tracker. It's an app on your phone, and had volunteers for this round collecting data and collecting litter. And we launched the event in 2021. The biggest response was, we need to control litter. We need to control people. People are just littering too much. What do we need? An anti-litter campaign. That's what we need. Fast forward to just this past year when we launched the Last Stop the Ocean and worked on an action plan, people had already shifted. They're like, we need sustainable materials. Why are we still giving out plastic bags? In the Illinois side, why don't we have a bottle deposit? Because the Iowa side has a bottle deposit. And it was really great. It was really inspirational for me to see that there's a shift in not just capturing it once it got in the water. It's really like, okay, we need to really work on this whole circularity. The beverage bottle being in the top 3 has made a huge impact on getting funding for some of our cities that don't have any recycling programs. And so, it's not reuse, it's not source reduction, but it is something that we can get funding instead of it being on the local taxpayer and the local government.
Within Public Works, we also have our zero waste team. And so this team is very much focused on education and outreach. And so while of course they are always messaging out how to properly recycle and encouraging behavior change, reuse is also an element that they really speak to and encourage, both when they're conducting tours, giving speaking engagements to K through 12 or university, community colleges, really helping to push forward on the pathways for residents to support the city and engage as we're trying to achieve these zero waste goals. We are also working really closely with some of our colleagues here at Upstream to kick off what we want to classify as Reuse Phoenix. So we're trying to emulate all of the great work that Reuse Seattle has done. And so how can we come together and start to cultivate reuse systems here in Phoenix and the metro area? And so this is relatively new. We are looking at, first and foremost, what are some pilots that we can collaborate around and get off the ground to start to demonstrate to city level leadership, state level leadership, the value and necessity around reuse systems. We're also very much focused on strategic engagement. And in terms of focusing on reuse, you can see here, we participate in a variety of different consortiums.
The reuse system in Durham was designed by the people for the people. It was a bunch of randos who met every day at the local co-op grocery store in the seating area. We had a sign on the table, and anyone who was interested in this topic could sit. We literally designed it together with like Sharpie markers and big white paper.
We reached out to many organizations within these cities. We had a launch for each of these cities for our plastic pollution initiative. And this isn't even all of the organizations, but these are the organizations that committed to partnering on plastic waste reduction in the Mississippi River.
Do not wait for money. Do not wait for political backing. You can do this anyway.